Planning a trip in 2026? Before you book that flight, you need to know this. In 73 countries around the world, being LGBTQ is still criminalized. In 11 of those, you could face the death penalty just for existing as yourself. But here's what most travel guides won't tell you. Even in countries where it's legal to be gay, legal protection and actual safety are two completely different things. A country might have marriage equality on paper, but still let employers fire you or hotels refuse you service with zero consequences. That's why I spent the last month analyzing legal frameworks in every country that claims to be LGBTQ friendly. And the country that ranks number one? It's probably not where you think. I'm going to show you exactly which countries have the strongest legal shields to protect you if something goes wrong, so you can travel with confidence instead of fear. Here's what's coming. I'll reveal the only country in the world with a perfect legal protection score and why their constitutional rights go further than anywhere else on Earth. You'll learn about the surprising Nordic country that protects LGBTQ travelers better than the United States in almost every way. And I'll expose the one country everyone assumes is safe, but actually has a massive legal loophole that could leave you completely unprotected. By the end, you'll have a ranked list of the 10 safest countries and exactly what to check before you book your next trip. Let me tell you why this ranking system exists. Back in 2015, marriage equality had just passed in the United States, and a lot of us thought we were good, legally protected. And then I watched a close friend get denied service at a bed and breakfast in Tennessee. They were legally married. They had every right to be there. But the owner cited religious freedom laws and turned them away. My friend called the police. The police said there was nothing they could do. The state had no explicit anti-discrimination protections for LGBTQ people in public accommodations. That moment taught me something crucial. Marriage equality is just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. Real safety comes from comprehensive legal frameworks. So when we talk about the safest countries for LGBTQ travel, we're not talking about vibes or rainbow flags during Pride Month. We're talking about 5 critical legal protections. Constitutional protections that explicitly include sexual orientation and gender identity. Employment non-discrimination laws. Public accommodations laws that prevent hotels and businesses from refusing service. Hate crime laws that enhance penalties when violence is motivated by anti-LGBTQ bias. And legal gender recognition rights that allow transgender people to update their documents without invasive requirements. A country needs all 5 to make this list. Anything less, and you're traveling with gaps in your legal armor. All right, let's count down from number 10 to number 1. Number 10, Argentina. Imagine a country where you can change your gender marker on your ID without a doctor's note, without surgery, without proving anything to anyone. Just a simple administrative process. That exists in exactly one place in the Americas, and most people have no idea. Welcome to Argentina. They passed one of the most progressive gender identity laws in the world back in 2012. Free gender-affirming healthcare, legal recognition without medical gatekeeping, and full protection from discrimination in employment, education, and public services. Argentina also has marriage equality since 2010, comprehensive anti-discrimination laws, and hate crime protections with enhanced penalties. Their constitution doesn't explicitly include sexual orientation and gender identity yet, which is why they're at number 10 instead of higher. But functionally, you're protected. And Buenos Aires has become a hub for LGBTQ travelers from across South America, specifically because of these protections. Number 9, Germany. This next country just made a massive leap forward in 2024 with a law that fundamentally changed how transgender people are treated. Germany passed the Self-Determination Act in 2024, which finally replaced a deeply invasive 1980s law that required psychological evaluations, court proceedings, and medical proof before you could change your legal gender. Now, it's a simple declaration at a registry office. Done. Germany has had marriage equality since 2017, strong employment protections, and constitutional recognition of LGBTQ rights. Their hate crime laws specifically enhance penalties for anti-LGBTQ violence. Where Germany loses points. Enforcement can be inconsistent across different states, and there have been reports of discrimination in rural areas. But from a pure legal framework perspective, you're covered. Number 8. France. This one might surprise you because France has a reputation for being incredibly progressive, but they actually have a specific legal gap that keeps them out of the top 5. France legalized same-sex marriage in 2013, has strong anti-discrimination employment laws, and technically has constitutional protections. They also updated their legal gender recognition process in 2016 to remove the requirement for surgery or sterilization. So, why number 8? France's hate crime laws are complicated. Anti-LGBTQ plus violence is recognized, but the legal framework for prosecuting these crimes isn't as robust as countries higher on this list. France has seen a significant rise in reported anti-LGBTQ plus hate crimes. Over 1,500 incidents in 2024 alone, according to SOS Homophobie. The legal protections exist. The enforcement is the question. For travelers, you're protected in major cities like Paris, Lyon, and Marseille. Rural areas can be a different story. Number 7. Belgium. Belgium was the second country in the entire world to legalize same-sex marriage back in 2003, and they've spent the last 2 decades building one of the most comprehensive anti-discrimination legal frameworks in Europe. Belgium has it all: marriage equality since 2003, adoption rights, employment protections, hate crime laws with enhanced penalties, and legal gender recognition that was simplified in 2018 to remove medical requirements. Here's the catch. Belgium's constitution doesn't explicitly enumerate sexual orientation or gender identity as protected classes. The protections come from statutory law, which is strong, but constitutional protections are the gold standard because they're harder to repeal. That said, Belgium is incredibly safe. Brussels is home to major LGBTQ+ organizations and has hosted Europride. The legal infrastructure is solid, the culture is affirming, and you're protected by law in every meaningful way. Number 6. Iceland. Here's where we start getting into the Nordic countries, and this is where legal protections start to look less like patchwork and more like intentional design. This next country has a population smaller than most mid-sized American cities, but they've built a legal framework that puts countries 50 times their size to shame. Iceland legalized same-sex marriage in 2010 and has explicit constitutional protections as of 2012 that specifically prohibit discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. They have hate crime laws that enhance penalties for anti-LGBTQ+ violence. They also have some of the most progressive parental leave policies in the world that apply equally to same-sex couples. Legal gender recognition was updated in 2012 to remove surgical requirements, and in 2019, they banned conversion therapy outright. Why only number 6? Honestly, it's because the countries ahead of them have even more comprehensive frameworks or longer track records of enforcement. But make no mistake, Iceland is spectacularly safe. Number 5. Norway. This next Nordic country has something that almost no one else on this list has. They explicitly prohibit hate speech against LGBTQ+ people with criminal penalties. Not just hate crimes, hate speech. And that legal distinction is massive. Norway has had anti-discrimination protections since 1981, making them one of the earliest adopters in the world. They legalized same-sex marriage in 2009, banned conversion therapy in 2022, and their hate speech laws specifically include sexual orientation and gender identity. Norway's legal gender recognition process was updated in 2016 to allow self-identification for adults without medical intervention. And their Gender Equality and Anti-Discrimination Act covers employment, housing, education, and public services. Why number 5 and not higher? Norway's transgender protections, while strong, came later than some other countries, and there's still ongoing debate about youth access to gender-affirming care. But from a traveler's perspective, you're legally bulletproof. Number 4, Canada. We're in the top 4 now, and this is where we see a massive leap in legal comprehensiveness. This next country doesn't just have protections, they have constitutional guarantees, federal legislation, and a charter of rights that makes discrimination functionally impossible to defend in court. Canada has had marriage equality since 2005, but here's what sets them apart. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms has been interpreted by the Supreme Court to explicitly protect sexual orientation as a prohibited ground of discrimination. Gender identity and expression were added to the Federal Human Rights Act in 2017. Canada also has federal hate crime laws, comprehensive employment protections, and every province has its own additional anti-discrimination legislation. Trans people can change their gender marker on federal documents like passports without medical intervention. So why only number 4? Canada's protections are newer than some European countries, and enforcement can vary significantly between provinces. Alberta is not the same as British Columbia, but federally, you're covered. Number 3, Portugal. This next country made history in 2018 by becoming one of the first places in the world to ban discrimination based on gender identity in its constitution. Not in a law, in the actual constitution. Portugal legalized same-sex marriage in 2010, adoption for same-sex couples in 2016, and then in 2018, they amended their constitution to explicitly include gender identity as a protected class. They also passed one of Europe's most progressive gender recognition laws that allows people to change their legal gender through a simple administrative process with no medical requirements. Portugal has comprehensive employment protections, public accommodations laws, and hate crime legislation with enhanced penalties. And they banned conversion therapy in 2018. Why number 3? Portugal has all the right laws, but they're still building a longer enforcement track record. The legal framework is nearly perfect. The cultural shift is still catching up in some rural areas. But if you're traveling to Portugal, you're legally protected at the constitutional level. That's as high as it gets. Number 2, Spain. We're almost at number 1, and this next country has been a trailblazer for LGBTQ+ rights since 2005. But here's what most people don't know. They just passed a landmark trans rights law in 2023 that leapfrogged them ahead of almost everyone in Europe. It's called the Trans Law, and it's a masterclass in legal protection. Spain legalized same-sex marriage in 2005, making them the 3rd country in the world to do so. They've had strong anti-discrimination laws for decades. And then, in 2023, they passed the Trans Law, which allows anyone over 16 to change their legal gender through self-declaration. No medical diagnosis, no waiting period, self-ID. Spain also has constitutional protections, comprehensive hate crime laws, and explicit protections in employment, housing, education, and healthcare. Regional governments like Catalonia and Madrid have additional layers of protection. Why number 2 and not number 1? Spain's protections are incredibly strong, but the country in the number 1 spot has something even Spain doesn't have: a perfect legal score across every single category. Number 1, Malta. All right, here's the big reveal. The safest country in the world for LGBTQ+ travelers based on legal protections is a tiny island nation in the Mediterranean that most people couldn't find on a map. But their legal framework is so comprehensive, so airtight, that they've held the number 1 spot on the ILGA Europe Rainbow Index for 9 consecutive years. That's Malta. Here's why Malta is untouchable. They have constitutional protections for both sexual orientation and gender identity that were added in 2014. They legalized same-sex marriage in 2017. They banned conversion therapy in 2016. They have a Gender Identity, Gender Expression, and Sex Characteristics Act that allows legal gender recognition without medical intervention. Malta's anti-discrimination laws cover employment, education, housing, healthcare, and public services. Their hate crime laws specifically enhance penalties for anti-LGBTQ+ violence. And here's the kicker. Malta recognizes a 3rd gender option on legal documents for non-binary people. Malta scores 94 out of 100 on the ILGA Europe Rainbow Index. No other country breaks 90. If you're LGBTQ+ and you want to travel somewhere where your legal rights are not up for debate, where discrimination is not tolerated, and where the government has actively built protections into every level of law, Malta is your answer. 3 quick honorable mentions that just barely missed the top 10. New Zealand, with marriage equality and strong protections. The Netherlands, who were the first country to legalize same-sex marriage in 2001. And Sweden, with incredibly strong protections. Now, knowing where to travel safely is just the first step. The next question is how to actually afford these trips without derailing your financial goals. Because the countries I just listed are also some of the most expensive destinations in the world. That's why my next video breaks down the exact system I use to travel to expensive countries on a budget, using credit card points, strategic booking, and LGBTQ plus travel grants that most people don't even know exist. I've used this system to visit 8 out of these 10 countries for less than $2,000 total. That video is up next.